If you're listening to this, your chances of going into a venture capital office and getting capital is about 1%. First you have to know them. Then you have to get in the door. Then you have to get the meeting. Then you have to get them to invest. It's nearly impossible. So this shifts the tables. It now puts you in control, allows you to raise money from your customers. So it's really transformed the way in which capital is raised online. And, people can raise up to $5 million a year through this. So, it doesn't matter where you are, just look into your Rolodex and put one of these offerings together and go out and, try your hand at it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Behind Their Success podcast. I'm Peyton Squires, the host, and today we have on Sherwood Neiss. Sherwood is a trailblazing entrepreneur and investor who helped write the crowdfunding exemption framework that became the foundation of the Jobs Act, legalizing equity crowdfunding in the United States. He is a 3-time Inc. 500 winner, Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year, and co-founder of Crowdfund Capital Advisors. Sherwood's work has empowered startups, influenced global policy, and transformed how entrepreneurs raise capital. Good morning, Sherwood. Welcome on Behind Their Success.
Good morning. It is exciting to be here.
Absolutely. So it's early for you. For the listeners, we're recording this, somewhat early in the morning. He's out in Denver, which is west of me. So appreciate him even getting up a little bit earlier to come on the show.
I get up at 5 every morning, so it's no problem.
You're ready to rock and roll. You're 2 hours in. So Sherwood, you're kind of the guy in crowdfunding, or, really we're a part of a lot of getting that possible in the United States. Tell us about you and crowdfunding in general.
Okay, well, the whole concept for crowdfunding really came about when I was running my prior company called Flavor RX. We flavored medicines for children so they're more compliant. We grew that from one pharmacy to 40,000. And I would always get these phone calls from mothers after they got their kids to take medicine saying, you just solved a massive pain point for me. Like, my kid was struggling. They were pushing back. The doctor was saying, I'm not going to prescribe another medicine. This is the one that they need. I can't get it down. I got it down. How do I invest in your business? And I was just like, you can't. I can only raise money from accredited investors. The SEC made these laws in 1933. I realize that doesn't relate to how we raise money today or how we live our lives online. We ended up selling FlavorX to a private equity group. But after we sold it, I kept on saying to my friends, boy, that was a missed opportunity. If I could have turned all of these mothers into investors, which I now call investimers, then they would become brand advocates for the company. They'd have a vested interest in the company. They'd be out there marketing, bringing more sales in, helping bring more investors in. It would have been a win-win-win. And I was just like, but, these laws written in 1933. And so then I didn't have a job. I didn't have really much to do. And I was living in Washington, D.C., where laws are made. So I sat down with 2 friends of mine from Silicon Valley. And I said, we've all raised capital from VCs. What happens if we update these securities laws to the internet age? And so we came up with an 8 bullet point framework that we socialized with our friends on Sand Hill Road out in California, where all the VCs are. And we said, at what point would we be stepping on your toes if we carved out a new exemption to allow retail investors to invest in startups? Is it 1, 5, 10 million? And they're like, 10 million's out of the question. 5 is really pushing it. But if you do 1, that's okay. Thinking we wouldn't get anywhere. Because who creates a law? All right. So we took this bullet point framework. We went down to the Hill. We socialized it with the SEC. They thought it was cute. They said, go over to the building with the white dome. Naively enough, we walked over there. We walked the halls of Congress, bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats. The White House actually reached out to us because they heard us speaking at a hearing, said that they were interested. So Obama came out with a statement of administrative support, which naively enough, I had went back to them and said, can you have a press release or something that really says you're behind this? And our contact at the White House was like, this is as high as it gets. This is the president saying,
don't ask for more.
Right. So President Obama came out, supported it. It was Republican led in the House. So this was completely bipartisan.
Yeah, that's all.
It passed the House 407-17. It went over to the Senate. We testified in front of the Senate Banking Committee, did all the lobbying ourselves. And we were at the White House as it launched this industry, which is now a $3 billion industry used by over 8,000 entrepreneurs in 1,200 cities across the United States. They've raised over $3 billion. And it's just really transform the way startups can go out and raise capital.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. I mean, like, you hear stories of people that, have ideas, or I'm going to go to Congress and change something. But like, I don't know if the listeners or general public even understands how incredibly difficult that can be. And it's amazing how, I guess you struck a chord and ones that everybody, really rallied behind. And you say, bipartisan support, a lot of things are rare to be bipartisan support. So that's, that's an amazing story there for sure.
A couple funny things about it are, one, the fact that we got the VCs to say, let's do this, or
you can have that lower market or with them, right?
Because if you're listening to this, your chances of going into a venture capital office and getting capital is about 1%. Like first you have to know them, then you have to get in the door, then you have to get the meeting, then you have to get them to invest. It's nearly impossible. So this shifts the tables. It now puts you in control, allows you to raise money from your customers, which look like you. The best part about this is women and minority represent up to 50% of the offerings. They're raising capital from other women and minorities. So it's really transformed the way in which capital is raised online. And, people can raise up to $5 million a year through this. So, it doesn't matter where you are. Just look into your Rolodex and put one of these offerings together and go out and, try your hand at it.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. You were obviously a massive part of helping getting that market just kind of all created and the legal framework for that. I kind of had a thought just pop into my head of like, I'm wondering if the next iteration of that is something along the line of, blockchain technology and, crypto and that kind of world that allows, I would say it almost in a way kind of takes crowdfunding to another level or a different level to where not only are you, maybe like an equity investor, but then you're like actively participating in the business in ways. But like, can you speak to that, or do you agree with any of that, or?
Can I speak to that? I live by what you're saying. So, I just published a book called Investomers, which is a very academic deep dive into this entire industry. Mm-hmm. And the last part of it talks about the future of investment crowdfunding. And I spent a lot of time talking about blockchain, crypto, how this will integrate with the metaverse, and how this will all play a role in the future. And so right now, the SEC is actively creating rules to allow for the issuance and the trading of crypto. Okay, now everybody keeps on thinking Bitcoin, but if you're really leaning into this, you have to think about how companies are going to be issuing crypto securities. So just instead of a common stock share, you're going to get a token that represents a share of common stock in a private company. And that's going to allow you to have ownership in these private companies, thousands of them, all across the United States. There's going to be value created in these companies, and you will be able to trade these tokens on secondary markets. And so the future of this industry is integrating regulation like regulation crowdfunding into the crypto framework for the issuance of these tokens, and then facilitating secondary trading on what's known as alternative trading systems, which are private exchanges, much like the New York Stock Exchange, but it's just a private exchange, and that's where these security tokens will trade.
Yeah, learning in the entrepreneur space and studying about crypto and different things over the years, that's really, I don't think people understand like how in the future that is going to allow people to just participate so much more in every pieces of the economy, right? Where it's not just, it democratizes a lot of economic benefit and allows people to participate in it in a way that we've never been capable necessarily before as like humanity.
I mean, you are preaching everything that I represent. Yeah. When we went to Washington, D.C. with this, we said, you are looking for, this is in 2008. So it passed in 2010. I'm sorry, it was 2008 was the Great Recession. We went in 2010, it passed in 2012. But during that time, Washington was looking for jobs. And we were like, if you want a solution to the job crisis, let's invest in the job creators. Those are America's startups and small businesses. They create the vast majority of jobs in the United States. So if we can get capital flowing to them, the number one thing that people do with capital tends to be, if they're not buying inventory, hiring people to help sell products and services. So this was our solution to that. But the benefits go way beyond this. When you're investing in local companies, you are essentially investing in local economies. One of the things that we can do, because we built this database that collects information on every single company collecting money through regulation crowdfunding. So we see their financials, we see how much they raise on a daily basis from how many investors. Those last two signals do not exist in the public markets, really, or in the private capital markets. And so we can learn a lot from them. But what you can learn from it is the economic impact that it's having. So we can see for every dollar that's invested through investment crowdfunding, it has a 10x multiplier effect in these local economies. They invest in the business buys more products and services, it employs people, and they essentially buy more goods and services in that community.
Yeah, you're right. It keeps the money local, right? And it keeps it circulating. And it's just a very powerful a model that, like, through blockchain and all that framework that can be a fully verifiable, trustless kind of type system. It allows us to get capital super efficiently into the places capital is most needed, right?
Exactly.
And it's going to, and just by doing that alone, it's going to definitely accelerate growth and, hopefully accelerate growth in the areas that, may not be growing as fast as we want, or providing more opportunity to others that don't necessarily get it.
I mean, like I was saying, up to 50% of the people that are receiving this money are women and minorities. They actually, you can't go into a bank for most of them and get a loan. By the way, debt crowdfunding.
Overly burdened. I mean, you know what I mean? There's just a lot of stuff that goes with that.
This has democratized access to capital where it didn't exist before. And we are really just at the beginning of this too.
Yeah. That's exciting. Just thinking about where the future of all that's going with blockchain and, like you said, the metaverse. And gosh, are we all going to end up living in tubes? Probably.
What's interesting about what you said, going back to the data that we collect, is, when the industry launched, we thought it was going to be mainly software technology type companies that are raising capital. Last year, the majority of companies that raised money were in healthcare, life sciences, and biotech. So to your, test tube thing, we are actually seeing the future of the healthcare industry by looking at these companies at their earliest stages that are out there with the most innovative technologies, by the way, that are leveraging AI in many cases to come up with better, solutions to existing problems. And we see the future in front of us. That's why we built a venture capital arm to what we're doing, because we wanted to take all the data, build an algorithm, use AI and machine learning with that algorithm to actually identify within the data set the companies that are the most promising, and then invest in hundreds of them. So our goal with that is to invest in 200 of them and hopefully have outsized, returns based on than traditional finance or VC.
Yeah. And that's so exciting with the tools that are coming about and the developments we're seeing, and especially, AI has just dumped gasoline on literally everything that's getting developed in the world. It can just all be done insanely much, I don't know, that's a sentence, insanely faster than I used to be able to do. And even in myself, in my own world, like with my own companies, I have been implementing a lot of new tools recently, and they're game changers. The technology with AI and being able to service people and really make your business great in all kinds of different aspects. It's a really exciting time to be like an entrepreneur or in the entrepreneur space, in my mind.
Oh, yeah. I can't even tell you how much we're using AI all throughout our day.
Yeah. And it's just like, even the most simple thing in my world is like, I talk to a lot of customers, right? A lot of different clients. I work with a lot of different people. And just the pure fact of Peyton trying to remember what conversation he had with who and whomever, it's all stuck in my head. Right. Now with today, the tools are everywhere, with AI and whatnot, be able to transcribe and anybody, me or anybody on my team, to quickly know what conversations Peyton has had with somebody, what was said, what wasn't said, and to quickly be caught up from a customer service standpoint. It's amazing, the tools that are out there.
Yeah. Yeah. We actually, one of the things that we did, we're very data focused. So, we wrote the law, We built that database and we're like, what can we do with this data? So the venture fund was one thing. But recently I said, now that there's, over 8,000 companies that have used this, let's see if we can use AI and machine learning to help issuers, entrepreneurs figure out how much can they raise through this. Yeah. So we built this entire report. It's a 10-page report called the Offering Insight Report, where you can fill out essentially a Form C, which is the document that you would file with the SEC when you want to raise money. We would take those exact inputs, run it through the algorithm, and it prints out a report to tell you which platform might be best for you to raise money, how much you can expect to raise, what your valuation should probably be given where your growth is and your age and your revenue. And then we give you a bunch of companies that are in similar industry at similar comps. So it works out.
Yeah. It's so amazing to me. And as a guy that prides himself being on the, the front edge, that, that's an amazing tool, and if anybody listening, is looking to get in the crowdfunding space or looking to fund something else, definitely check that out. It's just really interesting that, like, even a guy that, I feel pretty tech forward and trying to be tech forward, I don't use AI enough. And I'm a guy that I've gotten to this point where I feel like I'm constantly on it. If it's not helping you like day to day, almost in everything you're doing, if you're like on a computer all day long, right. You're not using AI enough to get efficiencies and get better at what you're doing. And, a great tool like that, like you have amazing experts at the tip of your fingers to ask questions to, of like, how much is my business worth? How much should I, right. How should I set all this up on crowdfunding, right?
Yeah. And when you have the data, it helps AI work better.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Because AI can hallucinate,
No, yeah, for sure.
And, even as good as it's getting right now, you have to look at everything. And then you have to critique it and tell it where it's wrong. But, it's a partner. It is not a replacement. That's for sure.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And especially depending on the type of business you're in, the human touch is certainly significant there as well, especially in my line of business. But, kind of turn into maybe some of our listeners here, for some of the listeners here that might be considering crowdfunding, as a strategy, what are some of the most common mistakes you see them make, and what's just maybe some general advice for them if they're kind of considering and going down that path?
The number one mistake with crowdfunding is you cannot crowdfund without a crowd. So you need to have your community before you go out and raise money. This is not a fishing expedition. You're not throwing a big net into a pond and pulling in a bunch of investors. You are actually taking the people that follow you, and you've socialized the idea that you need money and why you need money with them. And then you put one of these offerings together, and then you went back to them and said, I need you actually in the first, before your even offering goes live. This is another golden tip. No. Soft circle is what we call it. You need to soft circle about 30% of what you want to raise. So you need to go to the people that have the deepest pockets and be like, listen, I want to raise money. You think you're in? How much do you think you'd be in for? And then come up with that number and say, listen, when I launch, I need you to come in right away. Those are the most successful campaigns, the one that come out of the gate with 30%, because nobody wants to be the first person on the dance floor. Investors follow other investors. Yeah. Social you want to make that scene. The other thing is communication. You probably hear it in your personal lives with your spouses. You probably hear it if you're a boss, how it's important with your employees. It is critically important with your investors. The more transparent and communicative you are with your either investors to be or investors that you have on the cap table, the more engaged they will be and the more that they will be putting in. So you want to be communicating with them the entire time that you have your offering up. People can ask questions and you want to answer those questions on there. So that's really important. And the third thing I would say is get your valuation right. There's debt funding and there's equity crowdfunding. So if you're a small business and you just need $100,000 and you want to raise it through your customers, set your interest rate appropriately. But if you're doing equity crowdfunding, do not think this is 5 years ago where, cash was flowing freely and people were getting ridiculous valuations. Valuations have come down, and you need to scope them where investors are willing to invest. And here's the thing. the crowd consists of both very smart, sophisticated, almost venture-like investors, and then your friends. Okay. Your friends probably don't know what the right valuation is, but those really smart people that want to back your company aren't going to back it. And they're going to tell everyone if your valuation is out of whack. Yeah. So spend the time getting that right.
Yeah. That's great. That's great stuff. And, great advice there on that. And, that I jump in there and say is anytime you're raising money for somebody, and this isn't to scare a listener or anything, but it's a huge responsibility, right? And one you should definitely not take lightly, because you are taking value from somebody that trusts you and believes in you. And well, you better have your stuff buttoned up. And once again, not to scare anybody away from that, but just always remember that that's a huge responsibility.
Oh yeah. But here's the other thing, Peyton. If you're on TikTok and you're scrolling through TikTok at night because that's just how you decompress, or Instagram, and you're looking at reels, pay attention to what's happening. You've got these influencers on there that are pushing products, the Dubai viral chocolate. I bought into that one, and they are moving products in a way that we've never seen before. So traditional Madison Avenue advertising is the way of the past. If you're listening to this, you've got to be thinking, how are millennials getting their information? How are they living their lives? How are they, doing things? So you're going to start to see people that raise money through investment crowdfunding going to their investor base saying, I need you as an influencer in my business out there on social media talking about why you invested in it, why people should buy the product or service, why other people should invest in the business. And they're going to be these, what we call influencers. So influencers meet investors on social media, and it's going to be the future of what we're seeing. And the people that win in this space in the future, we've talked about AI, we've talked about, crypto, but it's also the people that are thinking, how am I going to leverage my crowd now? Not just for their capital, but for their brand advocacy for what I want to do.
100%. And if you're not building a crowd in some fashion, some way, you should probably start building a crowd.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Get those emails out, create blog
email lists. Yeah. Personal brand.
Oh, yeah.
Better get to work.
Are you looking for a new tax experience? Looking for an advisor that actually brings you high-level ideas and proactively plans so you aren't overpaying your taxes? Or how about one that even just responds and communicates in a timely fashion? If any of that resonates with you, you probably just have a tax preparer and not a tax planner. And it is through the tax planning process where all the value is found. And when tax planning is done right, it has a positive return on investment. I'm Peyton Squires. I'm a CPA and owner of Squires Tax Planning. We work alongside entrepreneurs and high-income earners, helping them pay the least amount of income taxes, both legally and ethically. We have saved our clients hundreds of thousands of dollars through specific strategies, and we guarantee we can find multiple tax strategies that your current tax preparer hasn't told you about. If that interests you, head over to squirestaxplanning.com. There you can take our free assessment to see how likely it is that you are overpaying on your income taxes. From there, you can also book a free tax discovery call with our team to see what it would look like to have us working for you.
So on the flip side of that, Sherwood, we kind of talked about, entrepreneurs raising money. What about the people that are looking to maybe participate on, be an investor in some of these crowd things? What are some things they should look out for or just kind of know going into it?
Well, the industry's growing rapidly. There's over 150 platforms, broker dealers, what we call funding portals that have registered. So it's very hard to find these deals. We came up with this thing called the Capital Pulse Report that helps people identify on all these different platforms what we think are the top deals that people should look at. So if you're an investor and you don't just want to flip through WeFunder or Start Engine or Honeycomb or the SMBX, you can get that. But what investors should be looking for is a combination of what VCs do. So you want to look at the team, their IP, what intellectual property they have, what we call their moat, what they're protecting, the market that they're addressing. I mean, take that with a grain of salt because everyone's going to say it's the biggest market in the world.
It's a $10 trillion market.
Right. Yeah. And we're going to be $1 trillion business in 3 years. Yeah. That's not the case. So you want to have people it's not that you don't want them to be aspirational. You want to see what milestones that they have down on paper for the capital that they want to raise from you. So that's where you want to focus. Like, do I like this company? Do I actually think they've got a product or service that I would buy? If so, do I want to invest in it? How much am I willing to risk? Is the valuation right? Tell me about this team. So you do your research that way. And you know what? I'll tell you what, read the comments. And by the way, if you don't want to read the comments, take the offering page, feed it into AI, and tell AI to tell you what are the other people on these comments saying.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a great way to use AI to help you reduce the time you're spending doing diligence. But, you know, and then if you're in debt crowdfunding, you know, I just think it's such a great opportunity for investors because the yields right now are about 10%. So a lot of these businesses just don't qualify for bank financing. Most of them are under 3 years old, okay? Banks don't lend to you if you're less than 3 years old, period. So you've got all of these Main Street type businesses that are cash flowing. Clearly, they've got great, you know, customers. And you know what? 10%, you know, is a great return on investment and 3-year terms. So, you know, you can diversify. That's what we tell people all the time. Don't put all your eggs in this basket. This is the highest risk form of investing. Although I'll tell you, we ran the data on the entire data set to see how many of the companies that have raised money through investment crowdfunding are out of business. Now, the SBA will tell you that within the first 5 years, over 50% of startups will go out of business. Do you know what it was? Do you want to take a guess what it is in investment crowdfunding?
30.
It was like 21.7%.
Okay, nice.
So
very good. Well, and it's people, you know, they build access to capital. They've learned how to do that, you know, to a degree. And the amazing thing is we can skip all the red tape of the banks and a lot of that stuff because it can be absolutely brutal to go through an SBA.
Right? I mean, good luck.
Yeah, I've helped my clients through lots of them, and it's like getting a prostate exam.
Right.
Not that I'm still too young to have had one, but it's something.
Been there, done that.
So Sherwood, you know, turning the conversation a bit to you, you know, you've obviously, you've done some impressive things and, you know, kind of a leader, definitely a leader, you know, in the crowdfunding space. What's one book and or habit you think that has been instrumental in your journey and success?
Well, you know, early on, I read Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. And, you know, it really gave me appreciation for if you build something, you know, own it, believe in it, make it worth it. And that's what I took away from that book. And I think, you know, I've sort of lived by that in terms of what we've done with this industry. You know, I'm a firm ardent supporter of it. And so I just think it's a great book for anyone to read. The other one is right up there. It's called The Love Battery. I wrote that with my son. And it's about how our hearts are batteries that store love and they're rechargeable. And so throughout the day, when kids are running around, their batteries run low. But at night, when you cuddle and you're kissing and hugging your kids, they recharge. And so it's about how the interaction that we have with others charges our love batteries. Wow.
Yeah, that's cool. I can imagine, you know, writing that with your son, how special that could be.
Yeah, it was great.
So one more question for you, Sherwood. Looking back, say to that guy in 2008, 2009, looking ahead of like, holy moly, I'm trying to change the United States government. If you can give that guy one piece of advice, what would it be?
You know, it's sort of simple. The world is full of no. It's just the easiest default position. It's easy for people to say. It's easy for people to believe. Don't listen to no. Aim for yes and get there through the phrase, why not? And the phrase, why not, doesn't have to be why not to the people that are saying no. It has to be why not to you, because you are the one that's driving the change. So if you're going to encounter a lot of people that just say no, and your response to them with why not is, I just don't believe that your why is the reality. And here's the deal. and we learned this in DC. Everything was no until you get one yes. And that one yes changes everything. Yeah. So keep your head down. Don't get discouraged. We all get discouraged. We all have bad days. They don't last. And just focus on the yes.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's great advice. Focus on the yes. And it's like, I don't know, there's a famous Mike Tyson quote where it's just like, everything's impossible until somebody does it. And I don't say it's Mike Tyson quote, everybody, you've heard that said before, but everything is impossible. Like, the 4-minute mile is impossible. Everything, the internet, me and you being able to communicate, like literally you ask anybody 100 years ago, everything we do in our life, they would say today, it was impossible. There's no way you can't do any of that stuff. It doesn't even exist until it does.
Exactly.
Until it does, until there's human force and will, and passion, a person like you that was willing to just carry that until it happened. And the amazing thing is when you carry something until it happens, like the world will get out of your way most of the time. Nothing wants to stand in front of something that is just relentless.
Right.
You will make progress, despite, whatever's going on in your head, all the setbacks, all that stuff, if you just don't quit, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's that common saying, right?
So true. From sports to entrepreneurs, everyone that succeeds tell you they succeeded because they didn't quit. Everyone that quit will tell you that they didn't succeed because they quit.
Yes.
The logic's pretty simple.
Like it's this weird expectations that, we, like all the humans have in our head, that like we shouldn't have any problems. Right. Or like things should be just, I should think something up my head and it just happens with, minimal effort or whatever. Right. And that's just not how it works. Like you're at a position in your life, whatever it is. And, not everything's your fault, but like, if you want to change stuff, I would highly encourage you to take full responsibility for everything. But to change something in the beginning is the hardest part, right? Is getting the inertia of moving, right? Your hardest part of probably moving that legislation was getting that first person to even take you halfway serious. Right?
Absolutely. When we were walking the halls of Congress, we met, Congress isn't full of entrepreneurs. It's full of lobbyists and lawyers. Okay?
Lawyers.
Right.
All attorneys.
And so the lobbyists that we met were like, who are you guys? What firm are you with? And we're like, we're just 3 entrepreneurs walking out. They're like, you can't do that. And we're like, what do you mean we can't? Like, we're not allowed? They're like, no, you're allowed, but you won't get any meetings. It'll take 5 years. It'll take $10 million. And we're like, well, we don't have 5 years of $10 million. And they're like, well, it's not going to happen. So when it happened, and by the way, when we were sitting at the White House, Obama said during his speech that this was the fastest idea to become law in like history, 465 days. And we got calls from all the lobby firms after we were at the White House saying, why don't you come work for us? But that's what it takes. It takes thinking outside of the box. It takes, we don't have that time. It takes, how can we do things differently?
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think it's playing a different game, right? If you would have tried to play their game, it wouldn't have worked.
Nope.
It wouldn't have worked. It would have taken $10 million in 5 years, right?
Right.
There's a great book by Malcolm Gladwell, who's one of my favorite authors. It's David and Goliath is the title of it, but he talks about the story of David and Goliath, right? And nobody thought David could beat Goliath because they thought that he was going to fight him in some traditional manner. Right. That he was going to put on all the big armor and go sword to sword with it. Well, no, David was playing a different game. He was playing a game with a slingshot, and no one expected that. He couldn't beat Goliath at his game, but he could win it at his own game. Right?
Yeah. It's funny to that. So we knew we needed to get the attention of the staff. We didn't care about the senators or the representatives. We knew it's the staffers that do all the communication, the staffers that let the senators and the representatives know what they need to be focused on. So you know how we got their attention? We had a rally between Union Station and the House building. And it was a Charlie Brown rally. It was rainy and snowy that morning. We were hoping to have like 100 people. I think 15 people
showed up.
But we had a big sign that said, you need to update the securities laws to the internet age. And every single person that stopped, that was a staffer, was one of the ones that made this become a law.
Yeah. And that's awesome. It speaks to the staffers too, right? Because the staffers are generally probably maybe, younger, right? Like even the senators and the representatives, and definitely younger than the senator.
Yeah.
But that even spoke, even like that message even, spoke to them probably even directly as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We told them, you want to invest in a startup? Well, you can't, but your boss can. They're like, what do you mean I can't? And I was just like, I mean, these laws, they're old. We need to update them.
Yeah, and you were talking about the accredited investor laws, and as a guy that obviously works in the tax and wealth space, that's something that is a big deal in my world. Mm-hmm. And I have, there's all these investments out there that some of my clients can do and get to take advantage of because they are accredited investors, and some of my clients that can't, and just because they don't hit a measurement that the government set out. In the law, whenever,
right?
And it cuts off, people off the market that can't have access to these certain type of investments because, the government deems them too risky or whatnot. But I tell you what, that's where a lot of the wealthy people play.
I mean, wealth creates wealth. So figure out how you can get that.
Yeah, 100%. So Sherwood, it's been a great conversation. Learning more about crowdfunding and your journey. What's the best way people can connect with you, get to know more about you and your companies and just crowdfunding in general?
Well, I would tell people, if you want to know how to crowdfund, get this 1-day, 150-page guide. It's called Investimers. It's our playbook on what you need to do. If you want to know everything that we're doing from our venture fund to that offering insight report, go to investorsbook.com. And then, if you really want to go to sleep at night, you can pick up the 400-page version of the book. But this gives you that whole.
It's for the real nerds, though, right?
Yeah, it's a series. So I had written the dummies guide, which is, you can't see it, but it's up there first, and I updated it with this because this is more recent. But I wrote the how-to first, and then everyone's just like, you need to actually write the why. And so it took me a year to write this one. But, you can get all that on investorsbook.com.
All right, guys, investorsbook.com. Guys, if you're looking into figuring out how to crowdfunding, all that kind of stuff, Sherwood obviously is a leader in the industry and a guy with lots of great resources. Sherwood, anything you want to leave for the listeners before we sign off here?
The future is in front of us. You are here now. If you are looking at raising capital, immediately type investment crowdfunding into Google or go to, investorsbook.com, and don't waste any time. That everything's changed. Nothing is the same. Billions of dollars are being raised. You can benefit from this.
Great advice. And obviously learn about it as much as you can, but most importantly, at some point you got to start taking some action. So learn as much as you can. And if you find out this is right for you, start moving towards it.
Exactly.
Listeners, thank you for taking the time to listen to the show. Sherwood, appreciate you, man. And we'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks, Peyton.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you found it valuable, please rate, review, and share it. That is the best way to help us build this and reach more people, as we're trying to accomplish our goal of help creating more healthy, wealthy, and wise entrepreneurs. You can follow us on social media by searching for me, Peyton Squires, or going to PeytonSquires.com. On the website and social media, we're always sharing tips of personal growth, and there we can actually interact. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.